Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Timeout with Derek and Joe. For Joe Azalina, I am Derek Gano. Thank you for taking time out of your day to spend some time with us. And today we have another very interesting episode. So interesting, we had to bring on two guests to help us out with the topic. So, to start off first, on our left side of the screen, we have Nick DeGerolamo. Nick, you joined us for some March Madness and college landscape back episode 30. For those that want to check that out, click right up here, right above my head, and you can go see Nick the first time around. Nick, thank you for joining us again.
Thanks for having me, Joseph. Thanks as well. Pleasure to be on again. I'm a big fan of the show. I've listened to quite a few episodes so far and looking forward to having a great episode and great discussion today.
And on our right side there, jumping in for us to help out is Phil Gunther, who was on again. Click right on up here if you want to see Phil's episode 32, where we had the NL West preview. Phil, thank you for coming on once again.
It's a pleasure to be back, guys. And yeah, since the last time I was on when we talked about the NL West, I miss having to hear Joseph eat his words about Gabe Kapler and those San Francisco Giants out there. But I underestimated him a bit too. But this is a fun topic that going on. You guys,
Philip, we're not talking baseball today.
I know.
What is our topic, everyone? You saw the main topic on the screen there, and it's kind of building up some steam in the past few days. For those that don't know, Joe, we had this planned out several weeks ahead of time.
Derek, you're on the ball, Derek.
Just so happens that it lined up perfectly, but should college athletes be paid? Just going to start off here. For those that don't know, just the basis here. We're going through the NCAA, and NCAA is a nonprofit organization that regulates college athletics, including game rules, athlete eligibility, and college tournaments. As of March 2021, the NCAA was composed of nearly 500,000 college athletes that make up just under 20,000 teams that send more than 57,000 participants to compete each year in the NCAA championships in 24 sports across 3 divisions. So they are the final authority when it comes to if college athletes should be paid. Nick, do you want to just start us off? Take it wherever you want, but just your brief synopsis here as we dive into the topic of college athletes, should they be paid?
So, my basic premise on it is that college athletes absolutely should be able to get paid. If you ever listen to or find Jay Billis on ESPN, usually you find him around college basketball time because he commentates for college basketball games, but he's also a practicing lawyer, and he's also a lawyer at a law firm. He played for Coach Krzyzewski at Duke back in the 80s. He helped coach with them. He's been a big advocate for athletes getting paid. I encourage you to even go on his Instagram or on SportsCenter's Instagram or Twitter's, Facebook, whatever. You'll see great quotes from him on explaining why college athletes should be paid. And I know what a lot of people say. How do you pay the starting quarterback at Alabama as opposed to the water polo at a Division III school? I get that, and we'll get into that later on in this discussion. But it is my firm belief that college athletes should be paid, whether it's through NIL, which was just announced literally, I think it was like 2-3 days ago. NCAA said starting July 1st, which was yesterday, every athlete across every division is able to do NIL. And you saw a lot of colleges came out right away and said, hey, you can do this, but here's what you can't do. A lot of them relate to, not doing anything related to cannabis, alcohol, cigarettes, sports gambling. What are some others that interfere with some of their deals? Like I saw Oklahoma said you can't do anything that isn't with Nike because they have an apparel deal with Nike, so you can't go out to Under Armour deals, etc., which is all fine. I saw on LinkedIn a couple hours ago some freshman who's 19 years old just signed a 4-year, $2 million sponsorship deal. He's going to an HBCU school, so he's going to be making $500,000 a year to be a spokesperson. And
Wow.
basically, his dad is a rapper. I think it was like Swag P or something like that.
Oh, Swaggy P.
Yeah, something like that. I really don't remember his name, but it was something like that. So his kid's 19 years old, and he's going to be getting paid $500,000 on top of going to school to do it. So it's definitely an interesting discussion, really, for the past 37 years, dating back to 1984, when the NCAA's business model started to crumble a little bit. The past 37 years, it's been a huge advocate that athletes should be able to earn compensation based off name, image, and likeliness. And as we get further in, there's actually quite a bit of schools. Obviously, the majority of them can't. Like a Division III school can't pay a kid, $50,000 stipend for athletic contributions. But we'll get into it. There are quite a few big schools in Division I that, if they wanted to, they could pay most of the athletes, if not some of them. Because in my own opinion, college athletes aren't even actually amateurs, in my opinion. They are technically, they're not amateurs. You could argue they're not pros because they're not in the pros yet. But again, you can't tell me that Luka Garza, who was in college basketball this past year, he's 22, 23 years old. You can't tell me that he's an amateur, but LaMelo Ball is, even though LaMelo Ball left after 1 year and is in the pros now and he's younger than him. It doesn't make sense to me, but it really doesn't. But that's my brief opening topic on it.
Phil, you want to get started on your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of good points there. I also fall on the side that I think that college athletes should be paid. Frankly, I think right now with the way that NIL legislation has moved and that kind of stuff, they are going to be able to. But I think the big thing for me too, when I look at it, is there's a couple of different components, obviously. So we've got the fact where obviously the NCAA, how it started, this competition, playing, you're representing your school. It goes back well over 100 years throughout history. And let's not, as you brought up, the last 30 years, how a lot has changed. But I think a lot of times we forget how some of this started, how we got to this point. I think it was have the date here, in the 1950s, there was a court case where a student athlete, they used the term student athlete started to come up and be more prevalent. I remember when every time I was young, we'd watch college football or any of the things you see, the advertisements, the NCAA ads would come up, we represent all the numbers that Derek just went through, all these student athletes. Most of them are going pro in something other than sports, that kind of thing. But the term student athlete was pretty much devised as a scheme by the NCAA and their legal team to avoid paying workers' compensation lawsuits. I mean, there was a widow in Texas that her husband died playing football, and the school, they wanted to avoid penalties from lawsuits and, from what happens on the field, that kind of thing. So this whole term, and I think how we kind of develop the amateurism is a big part of it. But when we look at it, it's 2021 now. We've had so many things happen and change throughout history where we've had scandals and, teams got suspended, players got in trouble. We wonder what's going on. I think now with the way that some of the stuff is moving, we're moving it above ground. We can kind of see it. Sure. All right. Now, is every school going to have an even playing field? All that stuff we'll discuss, these situations. But I think those are just realities of, it's big business now. That's just how it is when you're signing billion-dollar TV deals. And, you've got, they've done multiple things now too. Like the student athletes are getting taken care of better than they have in 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, that kind of stuff. But when you have situations where like guys have to come back from practice and, maybe the cafeteria is not open, with where they get their food, or just the little stuff of anybody who's been 20 years old, like if you're out on your own for the first time, these little things and the struggles that come up. I think if there's an opportunity for these players and there's a market for them to make money off of something that they've spent so much time and effort in, their families have sacrificed, I think it's about time that we at least give them the opportunity to take off the handcuffs.
Joe, go ahead.
Both of you guys felt it was such a tough decision. I took a sports management class my senior year at Notre Dame, and Notre Dame High School, I should say. And my teacher back then was the football coach out there, Jeff Nahr, and he talked about all the time that back in 2001, guys, that as I'm the oldest one on the show, I'll say that basically college basketball and college football, they bring in, and I know this is an obvious statement, but even 20 years ago, the college basketball and college football revenue was incredible. And then, like Phil just said, we're talking about 20 years now later. So I did read something else that I thought was interesting. $11 billion was made and put out there from Turner Sports for one NCAA national tournament. And that was unbelievable. I'm sure you guys read the same thing, but I want to throw that out there. That was unbelievable. I get it. We hear about it all the time with all these TV deals and whatever. But yeah, athletes absolutely, for all the risk of health, and we'll get into it, I'm sure, all the risks they can have. I know they get scholarships, but at some point we're going to see them getting money. And like Nick said, they're no longer going to be amateurs, even if they aren't right now, depending on skill level and all that stuff. But my biggest question, I don't know if somebody wants to answer this, unless you don't want to go there, but I do have this question I've been thinking about for the last 72 hours, is that how is it going to work if it actually happens that a Division I, we'll say basketball star, okay, X we'll call him, and then a Division I women's soccer player, let's just go male female here because it's a big issue. How is it all going to even out? And even like Nick said, position wise, a quarterback to a fifth string quarterback, like I don't know, like just that kind of thing. I'm just wondering how that all works, and I'm sure we'll cover it today.
Go ahead, Nick. Looks like you want to jump in there. Go ahead.
I mean, the thing you have to, there's a couple of ways that could go. Joseph just answered that really based off the top. I mean, the big thing to understand is, so the NIL just passed, and for people that don't understand that, NIL stands for name, image, likeliness. So previously, up until 48 hours ago, college athletes could not do anything while in school that helped them or they made money off their name, image, or likeliness. So just to give you a few examples. So 5 years ago, Katie Ledecky was about to be a freshman at Stanford, and she was competing at the Olympics. She won gold medals, and as part of competing for the USA team, you win money off that. Not allowed because she entered an agreement to be a college athlete. So I think she ended up having to turn away like $400,000 because she was considered an amateur. Okay. Now, and right there's a woman that could have easily gotten that kind of money. So college athletes competing in Olympic sports. Why should you not be able to earn money right there if you're competing in the Olympics? A big topic that's been up over the last 24 hours is Reggie Bush. Reggie Bush took in, I think it was like $300,000 while he was in school. And that was I believe it was mainly to help his parents who were struggling with their homes in San Diego, or maybe it was their home where he was originally from, and they got him a home in San Diego. Like, that's literally what the money went to, and they said that's not allowed. Not, hey, we'll buy you a house in San Diego, and you can come live here with your kid, like before he was in school. It was while he was in school. Another interesting way that you could also look at it is that if you're going to talk about schools directly paying them. So again, like I mentioned before, a lot of Division III, pretty much all Division III, all Division II, all the FCS schools in terms of football, so all the Villanovas, all the James Madisons, the North Dakota States, they probably can't afford to pay any amount of your athletes. Okay, even if you just pay the football team or the basketball team, well, now which women's sport are you going to pay? Because you have to do obliged by Title IX, and you can't say, well, we're paying the men, not going to pay the women. So a couple of things that I thought of off the top of my head when I was doing some research last night. One, you can see tuition go up at schools and universities to help pay for it. It could go up a couple $1,000s, and obviously that's another subject with student loans, borrowing money, giving out scholarships, etc. But that's one way you do it. I mean, if you're taking in, say, 2,000 people a school year, you just give, you raise it by 5,000. I'm not great at math, but I think that's what, like $1 million or something like that, or $100,000. Just $1 million you just made. So that's $1 million that you can now give out to your student athletes. And I think the average at most universities is right around 500 athletes per university, and that's assuming Division I. That is. So if you did basic math, as I do it on the calculator here, that's $20,000 you can give out to pretty much all your athletes. $20,000 in college, not that bad of a deal. The other thing that I saw that could potentially happen, again, you would hate to see this happen because you know how much you work to get a scholarship to go to college, play sports, but you could see some programs eliminated. You could see potentially some lesser men's sports get eliminated. And then you say, okay, well, we only have 5 or 6 men's sports and we have 8 women's sports. So that's how we're going to be able to balance it out and pay it better. Or you just cut programs in general. Because I know at St. John's, for example, we have no men's wrestling or women's wrestling, I should say. There's no football. I don't believe there's men's track and field, believe it or not. There's no women's lacrosse. I know that. They have no swimming sports of any kind. So add those on to however many sports you can think of. I think the only men's sports they have are baseball, soccer, golf, tennis, and basketball. Did I say lacrosse? I think they have lacrosse too. So they have like 6, and that's it. And then the women's sports, they have 9. So, and most of these, programs, they don't cost that much to operate and function. I mean, there is some that are very expensive and whatnot, but a lot of them aren't that expensive. So to answer Joseph's initial question before I went on a tangent, basically, I mean, cutting a couple programs, which would be not great, allocating money somewhere else is also a decent option. Raising tuition, which I know would not be a favorable opinion, or some of these big universities, you can start dipping into your endowment. I mean, I know that was a big thing with Stanford when COVID was wreaking havoc last year. I think it was in July. Stanford announced they were cutting like 15 sport programs. And some of them are like weird. Like one of them was men's and women's sailing, which I didn't even know was a college sport, to be honest.
Water polo.
Water polo I recognize, but sailing, yeah. I mean,
yeah, I didn't think so.
I think they were getting rid of like women's like fishing too. And I was like, you have fishing in college? But now wrestling was the big one for Stanford. And now after money was raised and a lot of movements were started, they announced they'll keep wrestling. But I mean, Stanford, the people were talking at the time, and Stanford has what, like a $50 billion or a couple $1 billion or hundreds of millions of dollars. It was a lot of money, big endowment.
Yeah, it's huge school.
The chancellors and people that you're paying that, millions and millions of dollars to, you can't reduce that by 10%. Or how about the coaches that make ridiculous amounts of money?
Well, that's the other thing.
Yeah, I think the money's there. Yeah, right.
Well, and Phil, I had this question thinking about it too. No, Nick, that was again really good points again. Phil, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I thought of this question just because for people out there that don't know, Phil is a local guy. He went to Easton High School, pitched there. They played baseball, pitched there, and then he went to Lehigh and pitched there. So the reason I'm saying that is, though, can you imagine knowing that your friends, a lot of them I knew were baseball players, but wrestling, basketball, baseball, football are 4 major sports at Lehigh University. I'm not saying anything groundbreaking here, but what I'm going to ask you is, as an athlete in college, could you have seen yourself getting paid or even the licensing? Like, how do you feel about that in a person?
Hey, well, first of all, just for the record, I would have been one of the last guys on the team that would have gotten paid through there. So let's just clear that up.
Good lefty.
Great guys, through there. Matt McBride was,
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I when this topic came up too, that's a lot of the stuff I think back, and pretty much everyone, a lot of people that have been in that situation too. I think it's a lot, when you're 18, 19 years old, 20, going out on your own, a lot of stuff is new. And this is another thing that I think that's kind of interesting through this, the implications, what good might come from this. Not only you're giving people opportunities, but these players now, and I think even so much more has changed since I was in college. And I remember when I first got accepted into school, I was excited when I got an email address from college, and that let me sign up for Facebook. Before then, you could never get on Facebook until you had like a thing there. That was a big deal getting into college when I was there. So it shows how much the world's changed now. And honestly, too, I think social media is like one of the biggest impetuses for even this whole NIL thing happening. Because I mean, people make lots of money on the internet, just, Instagram, all this other stuff, just taking pictures and having an account. Influencers are out there. That world wasn't really around, 15 years ago or 10 years ago so much that it is today, the big money. But I think really it's a great tool too. You're empowering the students, athletes to take charge. You can help improve their lives. They can learn financial literacy, learn to talk with businesses. If, colleges are about preparing you, giving you an education, preparing you for further, the rest of your life. I mean, I can't really think of a better way than you're like, hey, I'm out here. This is my brand. I'm this athlete. What I do affects, my potential earnings down the road. Or, I some of this stuff comes up into my head where I'm like, yeah, maybe some kids make decisions when, if they know like, hey, I could lose my money from company X if I, do something stupid out on a Saturday night, or, you know what I mean? Like that stuff obviously can come up, but I just think, a lot of stuff you've got to like evolve with the times. And as we brought up and stuff, like these issues really they've changed now, but like the premise of them hasn't gone away. When the Fab Five and those guys were getting, had scandals there with money, and college basketball, the sneaker game where this is a Nike school, this is an Adidas school. There's so much stuff behind the scenes that goes on to these players, and these companies are even too like recruiting, and they're going to camps. So there's a Nike camp or Adidas one. They're trying to get like the best 14 and 50-year-old kids there, and eventually, those are that's another kind of thing I just thought of, but like that's kind of the schools are important, but these athletes to themselves, like they're the ones that are out there playing. People want to follow them. Young kids want to, be like them, that kind of thing. And I think, it's just a little bit of a different deal from when, even being at Lehigh a couple of times when we get out of practice at 7:30 at night or something, 7 by the time you shower and you get through there. Not easy to find a trainer to get ice for your shoulder, or different situations out, and like, oh, we have to eat food. Well, there's only one place on campus where you can get food right now because everybody else, all the other students are done. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing, having to, eat an apple, a bag of chips, and a sandwich from the Goose, which is great. but having that be your main sustenance on, when you're playing a doubleheader on a Saturday, like that kind of stuff, you're out there for 8 hours, and it's tough kids that do that. It's fun stuff. That's some of the best times of their lives.
So, Phil, just to follow up on a couple of things that you said, two quick things. Well, I'll try to make them quick. One, you mentioned how an athlete was struggling to get food. That's why after Shabazz Napier in 2014, when he came back from, I think it was the Big East tournament, was like, hey, I'm getting home from this and doing all your press conferences at like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. Where am I supposed to get dinner? Because like I had to be at the thing at 4:30 to start warming up and everything. I didn't have time to. How am I supposed to eat? That's why they get stipends now to cover food in season so they can get meals. I mean, albeit you're eating late, but at least now you can go somewhere else out in town, and you can find a Wawa if you're in the Mid-Atlantic, 7-Eleven. You can maybe order a pizza. You get a little bit of money to help get some foods. Also, another option thing you mentioned, Phil, and I'm going to go to my notes here. You mentioned the money's there. I'm going to give you a couple of deals that I looked up and how big they are in terms of money. Now, keep in mind it goes to a lot of schools. Okay, I believe there's like 360 that are considered Division I, so I get there's a lot, but there's only 125 there for the FBS or the big time college football ones. But let me give you some deals. ESPN, worldwide leader in sports, pays $470 million per year to the New Year's Six Bowls, not the NCAA. The NCAA doesn't get any money of that. They pay that directly to the New Year's Six Bowls, and then the New Year's Six Bowls give that out to member conferences that competed in their bowl games.
Wow.
CBS and Turner. Turner is TNT, True TV, TBS, for those that don't know. They pay $800+ million a year for March Madness, a 3-week tournament, $800 million. And last year, or in 2018, 2019, the last full year that wasn't affected at all by a pandemic, brought in over $1.18 billion in revenue. That's an extra $300+ million they didn't have before. And that's now that's before you pay your announcers and everything. But still, that's probably over $250 million, because I know you're not giving Nance and Miller and all the guys $10 million each just for doing that tournament or anything like that. ESPN, again, worldwide leader in sports. They air almost all of the postseason conference championships or NCAA championships and all other sports. Again, March Madness they don't, because CBS and Turner have it. But they air just about all the other ones. And again, they don't get the money from the football championship that goes again to the member schools, but all the other ones. So the wrestling, baseball, the College World Series, which just concluded, Women's College World Series, the Women's Lacrosse Championship, soccer, etc. They pay on average $35.7 million per year for all those other sports. Again, a lot of those are non-revenue sports, which we'll talk about later, but $35.7 million, that's a lot of money. Notre Dame, your boys, Joseph, they get $15 million every year from NBC. Wow. And they don't even play all their games on NBC either. They usually have at least 1 or 2 games on ABC, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right, and CBS usually is Army or Navy.
CBS,
so yeah,
if they play Army or Navy. So what, like 10 games maybe? Because again, postseason ESPN gets their games. So you're paying almost like $1.5 million per game.
These schools don't hurt.
SEC premium package. So for those of you that may not know, okay, so every week on Saturday afternoon, usually it's around like 3:30, unless it's Alabama LSU.
8 o'clock.
Championship. Yep. They play at like 3:30 in the afternoon. And it's basically like the SEC game of the week. Okay, so you can see like Alabama, Florida. You might see Tennessee against LSU. And usually they're pretty good games. Now, last couple of years, Alabama's been a juggernaut. They're blowing teams out 42-0 at halftime. But most of the time, they're actually good games, and you see a lot of future NFL talent on there, okay? Currently, through 2023, so for the next 3 seasons, the SEC conference, which again, so each conference is able to negotiate these TV deals, okay? So ACC negotiates their own. Big Ten Network has their own deals with their network and Fox and ESPN. The Atlantic 10, et cetera, et cetera. SEC, they're getting $55 million from CBS per year They air basically like 15, maybe 18 games if you have a double header, if you're lucky. But it's really probably no more than 15 because you don't even start the first week or two in the season. It starts later on. So $55 million. In 2024, I looked it up. ESPN got the rights. They negotiated this past December. Starting in 2024 for 10 years, ESPN is going to pay $300 million per year for the same package.
Wow.
And that's the premium package again. So this isn't all the other ancillary ones where, you see Alabama play Kentucky at 12 o'clock on the Saturday. Or, Mississippi State is going to be playing
Auburn
7 o'clock on ESPN2. Not regular package. This is the premium package, game of the week for the SEC conference, one of the best conferences in football. $300 million a year for basically 15 games.
That's unreal.
Just to give you guys a little perspective on that.
That's wild.
My case on that.
Well,
And that's just
so let me jump in here.
Yeah, Derek needs to say some stuff here.
First, I think everyone seems to be going positive. Whether you believe I'm the opposite side or not, I'm going to try to pull from that direction. I think it's pretty blatantly obvious, right? Everyone has plenty of money. That's not really in question. I guess that now we can go back to Phil. Joe asked the question about, would you like money? Well, let's think of it this way.
Yeah.
Let's think of Lehigh is think in our brains here. Think they were as like a Notre Dame in terms of football.
Oh,
They're a top D1 football school. You go there for baseball, and people say, sorry, Phil, we're going to be cutting the baseball program because we want to pay the football athletes. That's going to go around the country. Well, where do we think about stuff like that? Because
it's already happening.
I mean, Nick went into the plenty of places. Yeah,
Two-sport
Nick
athletes
went into
too.
plenty of places that would be cutting smaller sports. You also get into the Title IX thinking, because everyone can think about, you compare, the WNBA and the NBA, or even probably women's college basketball and men's college basketball. Men's college basketball is going to make more money. In order to pay those college men's athletes, basketball, football, we can't cut women's. We're going to be cutting pretty much every one. Do we want to cut pretty much every one of, for some schools, not the schools, I'm not talking about Michigan and Ohio State, Penn State. They're not going to have many issues.
Southwest Missouri State.
But the smaller schools, Missouri State, or, schools like that are going to have to cut a lot of the smaller sports. What are your thoughts on that, Phil?
Yeah, that's a good question, Eric. Definitely, it's, playing baseball myself and, going to Lehigh too, I was close with a lot of wrestlers. One of the best wrestling programs in the country. Like over the last 10 years, though, you look around.
And by the way, wrestling, how much money does that make? So,
right.
Is it?
I think that's a good point, though, too. Like that, a lot of places, a lot of schools you've seen, like wrestling programs have been decimated across the country. A lot of it, Title IX, the fairness, that thing. Now, Lehigh, a place that has a tremendous history, wrestlers, All-Americans going back there. They also have a lot of alumni who have done very well and want to give back to the program.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the big things, too, when we talk about, first of all, you have the money the schools are making. Like we said, the contracts through there, the TV deals, that kind of stuff. All right, it goes to coaches, it goes to overhead, that stuff. And, I don't want to, it breaks my heart when I see these programs get cut. Kids get recruited to these places, go there, make their friends a year or two, and then, oh, we've got no more program. Now what do I do? that's a terrible situation to be in. And, there's a lot of it just, my mind travels back to these little conversations. It's like, oh, well, this guy's on the football team. What's he going to get these benefits? This guy's on the lacrosse team, or he's a track and field. Like all this stuff too, it already exists. Like if you're trying to, like, going back then, we had to go into an online portal to try to, set up time with a trainer to get your, if you need therapy for your leg or your arm, all this little stuff. All these players are like, oh, how come the guys on the soccer team get more time here? Or the football guys get all this time in the weight room, and we have this small amount. Like there's a difference. There's a disparity already between, what programs get what. Some of it's real, some of it's in the head kind of thing. But I think like the big thing that's with this, like starting to open up, the difference where I see it is schools are going to give the benefits. Like right now they spend so much money on locker rooms, all this stuff to try to the recruiting competitions through there. But little things like even, having the ability to like work camps, to be like, hey, I'm, Joe Smith and I'm a guard on the basketball team or something. I want to have this camp for kids to like even advertise your name out. You couldn't do that before. Like, I remember working like 1 week at the Lehigh baseball camp and being like, wow, I'm like here all week. I made $400. This is amazing. There's like one opportunity, and that was a school sponsored thing where some guys get, picked. But like nowadays, there's just a lot more opportunities. And I think it's the big difference of where I would pose this question out to you guys is, do you think that, I mean, a lot of the stuff that's coming up right now with NIL has to do with like third party, being able to market yourself through there. Do you see that as a way of kind of the NCAA pretty much just going, all right, we're not going to have as many rules in this, or now they're talking about getting Congress in. Is that like do you think this is more of a patchwork solution or something that's going to long-term kind of work out?
I mean, personally, the NCAA, I think, is just in trouble of being even existing in, say, 10, 15 years maybe. Because, I mean, the NCAA's whole premise is that we oversee athletes, student athletes, and they're amateurs before they go professional. Well, now you're able to make money, okay? And now, listen, everyone's going to say in high school because you can't do it because high school you definitely are an amateur because you're in high school. You haven't graduated yet. A lot of kids aren't even 18 at the time they graduate, or if you are 18, you don't have a degree yet. You may not have your driver's license yet. Guilty pleasure there. A lot of other things. But you should be able to negotiate your own stuff with it in a sense. But another thing you mentioned too that I just wanted to touch up on is that, well, if a program gets cut, well, and Phil, you obviously played at Lehigh, so maybe you could share your experience with there. Now, obviously at St. John's, we didn't have football and wrestling, but I know from going to even smaller games, like I went to visit some friends at Temple, and I had friends that went to Penn State. You had to pay to get in there, so that's one sport you have to pay to get into. Wrestling, I would have to pay minimal. It was like a $10 ticket, but still, it's $10. And I went to see Rutgers wrestle like once or twice. You get 10,000 people there. That's a good chunk of change. And then if you do concessions, you have a halftime there, so you're keeping people there. And then basketball for St. John's, men's basketball only, you had to pay. Now, if you were a student and it was a home game on campus, you didn't have to pay. You just show your ID card and you get a nosebleed seat. I paid $100, $120 every season, so I got to stand behind a basket and yell at players as they're shooting foul shots. And then I also got tickets to go to Madison Square Garden and sit courtside, especially when you knock off number 4 in the country, Duke Blue Devils. Great time to see that stuff, okay? It's definitely worth the money. But other than those 3 sports, nothing at St. John's costs money to get into. Now, I don't know what it was like for Lehigh if you had to pay to get into baseball games. I mean, I'm sure like your parents probably didn't have to pay. You put them on like a certain list. You show your card or whatever at the game. You don't have to pay. But we're talking about like, okay, well, programs may be getting cut, or how do you get the money? Why aren't these programs charging money for regular people that want to come? I mean, I'm okay if you don't make the parents pay. And maybe if you're a student on campus, okay, you don't have to pay either. Like if you're a student, like if I wanted to go watch the women's track and field team compete, okay, I can see that not paying. But why not make regular people just pay like a $10 thing? Okay, maybe you don't have a ton of people that come because you know it's like golf, it's tennis, sailing, which we mentioned earlier, water polo. You know, maybe you don't get a ton of money, but if an athlete has a big following on something like Twitch or Instagram, okay, like I found an Oregon softball player from TikTok. Okay, she became like TikTok famous. Like, how do you not, if you get people to come see her play and whatnot? Okay, why would you not just charge money then to have like those people that want to come and see those athletes perform and play? That could easily generate your revenue. And again, that gets into the whole discussion and topic of well, how do you pay a softball player from a golf player to the third string quarterback on Alabama, who's probably not even suiting up this week, but you want to be fair to him. That again, that's like the biggest con to actually paying the athletes, but through NIL, it shouldn't be like an issue to allow them to just be able to do it. I mean, Phil, how many sports did you actually have to pay to go see? Now, you were a student, so maybe not as many, but do you know any other sports that you had to pay to go see at Lehigh?
Well, yeah, I mean, honestly, that's the thing. It's been one, you know, yes. First of all, they would give us your student ID you in and out to games pretty much wherever you needed to. Football specifically, they would even, our football stadium was on a different part of campus, so they would have buses for kids to go over in the morning through there, drop you off, you know, set you up. They did a lot of stuff just to get students in. You know, there's athletics, but you know, Lehigh kind of is like the Patriot League tries to do the Ivy League light kind of model for a bit. You know, like if you see the Ivy League, they don't really have traditional scholarships in some sports, or, you know, like the focus is on academics where kind of we get through the beginning of this. But I think now more or less on what we're seeing is, I mean, like you're charging admission. This is entertainment. There's a whole ecosystem of people in the athletic department that are built up to support, you know, these programs. Like, they're businesses. You're in the entertainment business. There's a lot of things around there. So I think ultimately, like, now that these options with NIL and that kind of stuff are opening up, that I think it's more of a scale of just the NCAA is going to be like, hey, how do we just like make sure this thing doesn't go wild? You know what I mean? Or like, what's some kind of, I like the fact that they're athletes. Like, hey, if you have 10,000 followers on Twitter and somebody wants to pay you, you know, or Instagram, all that stuff, pay you to represent their brand and send out a tweet, like, all right, go for it. You know what I mean? Like that's something that, and you're only going to have those opportunities. You know, they rarely come up in your life. So take advantage of it. It's just one of those things. Yeah. I wonder too, like you said, the NCAA, you know, they're kind of hanging on by a thread as they make record billions of dollars with these contracts and that kind of stuff too. So you also have their interested, you know, the parties through there want to keep this thing together. And how can we do it in a way that, you know, I'm glad that the players now are starting to get a voice, you know.
Yeah, so I think we're all on the same boat here. And now why can't it just be enough for, in all your guys' opinions, Joe, we'll start off with you. You haven't got much talking time here. Why can't it just be enough to have the name, image, and likeness, and you can build your brand off of that, as Nick was saying. Why do you think we need to take that extra money from the schools, obviously, and give that to the players? You know, we talk about how obviously they're getting scholarships already, which if you're comparing normal kids to the football players and all of them, obviously they're already getting full ride scholarships,
Right.
and they'll be getting more on top of that. What are your thoughts in terms of, do they also need that extra money? And this is all the ultimate question, isn't it? On top of that, name, image, and likeness, moving forward.
I think some players, I think some student athletes would be happy with what's going to happen now. I think they're going to be happy with the video. You know, the one thing we all have grown up with is playing video games. I mean, I still have Xbox. You know, it's interesting because I remember back in the day, you had to create play or go to a magazine, and I was guilty of doing this. I would just put the name with the number, and I love to do it just because I'm a nerd. But like, you know, that's you don't have to do that probably anymore after this year.
Memory cards on eBay that would have the roster.
Right. And that would have been something that would have been a lot more simple for me, Phil, but I didn't do that. But anyway, so no, I think Derek, it's a really good question, because if you look at it in the landscape of college sports and you just look at like three major sports, you look at basketball, football, and all throughout their baseball, I want to say, I look at some of these athletes that are like, yeah, they're like going to be phenomenal pros, right? Like you're going to have guys like Travis Etienne, who just got drafted. You're going to have guys like your big time stars. But what about those guys that are just average? What about those guys that aren't going to be able to make the money in the pros, but they're going to make some kind of money in college now, collegiately? It's a big thing, right?
But how much are those guys even going to get is the thing.
And that's
because obviously that's a big thing, right? You still can't use the logos or anything like that. And people have been making points. There are only a certain amount of people,
right,
that you can just go to and be like, oh, that's Travis, or that's Trevor Lawrence, that's Travis Etienne.
Right.
You know, they're not going to know who the the starting I don't even know positions on volleyball. The starting volleyball player on Clemson, you know, and it's going to be hard for them to even get that stuff.
In a Division III school, I have a good buddy of mine. I went to high school. His brother now is an athletic director at this Division III school. He said it is so hilarious how the sports are so different when it comes to like what they're bringing in and what they have to do to make these things work with the COVID world, how we just went through that, right? Hopefully never again. Fingers crossed. But like, that's what I'm saying. Like you have a lot of that situations going on. The other thing I want to touch on, and I don't want to forget this, and it's not really off topic because it goes into all this. My other point of why they need to pay the athletes, I have two names I remembered. I'm proud of myself that I remember this. Nick, you might not know these names. Phil, you're going to help me with the Penn State name, but we're talking about risk and injuries. Adam Telefero, right? A defensive back. Now, again, I'm proud of myself that I can remember this. And Eric LeGrand from Rutgers. Both guys are very prominent in how they came through their crazy, crazy injuries. But those guys, if you're thinking about today's world and how these guys made it through, and I don't want to get emotional, but I know what it's like to struggle. And these guys struggled throughout their college careers. And now, like, you know, they deserve to be paid back then. So I just want to throw those names out there. And for Penn State fans, I hope and my friends, I hope you're proud of me for bringing up Telefero's name. But yeah, I wanted to bring that up.
I think he's on the board of trustees now at Penn State. He went to law school, did through there. And LeGrand, my uncle has season tickets at Rutgers. So I get a couple games every year to go through there. And he's still, every time you look around, you see Eric LeGrand stuff. You know, he's within the program. So they've done a nice job of incorporating him. I mean, still a tragedy. And it's the reality of what happens out on these, on these sports. Things
and both guys almost, if I'm not mistaken, I wanted to make sure I was right, but I think both guys were almost paralyzed.
Eric LeGrand is.
He is, okay. But Telefero was not.
Powers were covered, yeah.
Okay.
He couldn't
Eric
walk
LeGrand,
for like a
I don't
year.
think LeGrand has any movement in anything, to be honest.
Oh my God.
And
And I
that's now
just, yeah,
10 years
it's
ago.
the injuries and the risk of it all. You
That's
know?
how a lot of this came up too. Like we said, I mean, if you look through the student athletes, that whole moniker, it came up because they didn't want these players to be associated. You know, they weren't employees of the university. Therefore, when they got hurt, the schools didn't have to, you know, pay workers compensation. And there was even outlets going through looking at some of the research before. In one of the court cases, they brought up how, you know, the university, maybe in Colorado, it's relevant. University of Colorado is not in the football business. That's what they said in 1970. Well, you know, courts aren't you're not going to get away with that nowadays when, you know, your conference, your school's bringing in like hundreds of millions of dollars for their TV package. So I think that's just kind of, you know, it shows how things have grown. And as we have like a more connected world with social media and monetization, you know, we're bringing up, and Derek, you said, you know, volleyball players, basketball players, there's the Title IX question. Well, there's these two twins, Hannah and Haley Cavinder. Yeah, you know the name through there?
Yeah, TikTok famous.
3.3 million followers on TikTok, 250,000 on Instagram. They have a deal right now, as it went through, with Boost Mobile and 6-Star Nutrition. So there's a billboard in Times City, in Times Square with them in New York City right now. So like,
Wow.
you know, I think it's going to be like the Title IX is an interesting thing. I think there's obviously, like, when you talk about how the women's soccer team, you know, like they're on the nationals, on the international scale, and people, you know some of their players more now, and they're becoming more visible. I think it should be, the way I see it, as far as, you know, the best way for them to approach it is kind of let a free market, let the students go out and use the NIL, that kind of situation. Then you don't get into a dicey, then you're avoiding the, okay, this is how much a girl on the soccer team gets, this is how much the guy on the basketball team gets, the guy on the, you know, soccer team, that kind of stuff. If they can avoid it, have a small stipend or something like that, that people get as a boost, but all the other stuff on the outside, maybe, you know, let them have the freedom. Somebody wants to make a deal with the sandwich shop on campus to take a picture for their flyers, you know what I mean? Go for it.
Little things, yeah, definitely.
So Nick,
Derek, I wanted to answer your question because you had mentioned a couple of minutes ago about why should they get like a stipend for the games that they perform in when they're already getting academics or a scholarship. It's important to know two things about that. Number one, I'm just going to use Trevor Lawrence as an example, okay? Because we know he was on a full ride at
Great example. Great
football,
example.
okay? He's on a full ride at football, okay? What a full ride means and what that scholarship means to people that don't know is that your academic costs are covered. Like, it has nothing to do, you getting a scholarship has nothing to do with athletics whatsoever. Nothing. Zero.
With tuition, room, board, that stuff.
It
No
covers
hospital.
your-
No hospital visits.
basically, it covers your meal plan. It covers your room and board. So basically whatever your housing is. And it covers all your tuition and fees that otherwise would list on sites. Okay. That's what the scholarship covers. It's covering your academic costs. It has nothing to do with athletic
Great
costs.
point.
So your academic stuff and the time you put in for academics is now being covered, which is no different, by the way, than, you know, someone that goes to Harvard on a full ride or someone that goes to USC on a full ride. Okay. People that are not athletes can go to schools on full rides. Okay. And those kids that go on full rides that aren't involved in athletics, they can start their own business called Joe Schmo's tutoring business, or, you know,
Landscaping.
volleyball lessons with Maria, because I used to play in high school. Okay.
Yeah,
So
English major.
they're allowed to do those things. But because the athlete is playing for the university, you're not allowed to, is what basically they were saying. And again, ties into NIL and stuff. But it covers academic costs. Nothing to do with athletics. So it's two separate entities in total. The other thing to understand is a lot of people don't go on full rides. Now, obviously, a big-time college football player probably does. Okay, like a Trevor Lawrence, a Travis Etienne, the Bosa twins at Ohio State,
Reggie Bush.
when he went to LSU for 2.5 months. Guy pulled out the 1.4 GPA, but that's another topic. I don't even know how you get 1.4 GPA, to be honest. But Joel Embiid at Kansas, he was on a full ride, okay? I imagine Shabazz Napier was on a full ride, okay? We had a guy at St. John's, Shamori Ponce. He was on a full ride, okay? They were on full rides. But not everyone on your team is on a full ride, okay? I'll use I'll use baseball. I think baseball is the best example.
Yeah.
Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's
Derek and Joe, guess how many scholarships for an NCAA baseball team you're allowed to, the maximum? Say you
Take a guess.
11.1, right?
Yeah.
11.1?
11.7, I think it is.
Okay. I was gonna say like 5 or 6.
The 0.7 people, it means you get like a 7/10 of a scholarship.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of them are broken up, like half scholarships. Some guys get 30%, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you only get it for like the months you're playing, and then you have to pay for the rest. Yeah, and there's some sports where it's now football. I think football gets 85. Okay, and people are gonna say, well, how does football get 85? Everyone's on scholarship. Like 25 or 30 of them don't even play for that 1 year. Whether it's they had an injury in high school that they're recovering from, you're a sophomore and you tore your ACL in April.
Not playing their junior year. Yeah.
You're still on scholarship again for academics, but you're not playing on the team at all. Okay. And you get some walk-ons and whatnot. That's why you have rosters that are like 100 plus for home games, but the travel roster is probably like 45, 50. Okay. But other sports too. I think basketball, you have 15 players on the team. It's like 12.3, I think it was, for basketball for men. Women, it was like 10.6. I think for soccer, it's like 7 or 8. And there's like 20-something people on the team and whatnot. So a lot of these players, you say, oh, well, you got a scholarship. Well, that scholarship may only cover like the 2 to 3 months that you're actually playing in season. And then the other 5 to 6 months that you're in the quote unquote off season, but you're going to play a friendly against Fordham on a, Saturday afternoon. You still got to go to weightlifting sessions 3 days a week. You still got to do spring practices if you're a fall athlete, or if you're a spring athlete, you still have to do fall practices. And meanwhile, you're not getting any help financially aiding with that. So that's just to answer Derek's question about why you get more on top of that is because it's covering academics. And now we're talking about athletics. Like 2 different sides of a spectrum here. Like this is
by the way, it can be as easy as it's given to you. It can be taken right away from you.
Year to year, right? Yeah, year to year.
You get caught with, obviously it's a changing landscape, but the example, the Olympic runner that just got isn't allowed to be in the 100 meters. You get caught, smoking weed, or you get in trouble because you were out late at a club, or you failed a test. They can easily pull your scholarship. And in some teams, they got a great 4-star athlete that's coming to them as a freshman, and you got a junior that hasn't really panned out as well. Well, that junior, you're going to pull that scholarship for and give it to that freshman. So that's just another way to touch on pulling the scholarships. And just to close on the whole scholarship thing, this is the best example I give people all the time. Let's just pretend that Joseph plays the trumpet at USC. He's on the USC band squad. And Phil is the starting quarterback for the USC football team.
Hey, friends.
Joseph, who's on a band scholarship, full ride band scholarship, is allowed to give people tutoring lessons on how to play the trumpet and can start his own show called Joseph's Sports Hot Topics Show, whatever it's called, okay? He's allowed to do that. And he could charge, Hulu or Netflix or some local business where he grew up in the Lehigh Valley, he could charge them $500 for an ad, for like a 2-minute ad. He's allowed to do that. Full ride scholarship. Phil's the quarterback at USC. Up until 48 hours ago,
Yeah.
Phil was not allowed to do the same thing Joseph would be allowed to do, even though they're both on scholarship full ride. So how is it fair for a band kid to be able to do it and not an athlete? And the band performs for half the athletes.
That's true.
I rest my case on that one.
Yeah, that's a very valid point on that one. Holy crap.
Well,
Yeah, remember the old Ohio State back when Terrell Pryor was there, when they had a bunch of players get suspended because they got tattoos from a tattoo shop for free.
Oh, that's
They
right.
gave them for free because they were Ohio State football players, and that was a huge thing. Like this kind of stuff where it's like, I mean, I remember too, just even it was one of our, I was a freshman, first time going through this. They had the team meeting, and you get in like after the campus, they have the people that talk about, your compliance, the athletics compliance department. This is all the stuff we need to do, make sure these are the rules. We got like a page, a huge thing from the NCAA that was like 5-6 pages on all these rules, complex legal stuff. You couldn't even understand how, and it was just basically like, oh, these are the rules. You have to follow every single one of them. If you don't, you're ineligible, blah, 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 this kind of thing. You have to look at it. They give you a 10-minute speech. You have to sign it or you're off the team pretty much. You know what I mean? Like that was kind of the situation. Now, at least, they're getting some bargaining power or some seat at the table, so to speak. There's more of their concerns are being heard.
I think it's important to just say real quick too. I mean, I can't speak for everyone else. You can chime in after I do it, but I think what it's important to say is that we don't condone schools bribing athletes to come there, or say, hey, we'll pay you $50,000 to come here, or here's a nice gold car, you should come sign with us, or Netflix, or I think Nike, just use Nike, or Nike, because Nike's in Oregon. Nike going to some college football or basketball or baseball, wrestling, whatever recruit, and saying, hey, you can get a nice little deal here if you come play with Oregon, because we're right next to them. Like, I don't think anyone's saying that should be allowed. What SMU was doing back in the late 70s and 80s with Ron Meyer, what a lot of Southern schools, like a bunch of Texas schools, a bunch of, Florida, I know got slammed with violations. Alabama did back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I remember Texas A&M allegedly bought Eric Dickerson a gold Trans Am to come to the university. And the day before signing, he was having regrets, and then he turned around and signed with SMU. And SMU calls it the Gold's Trans A&M. It was a fun joke, but it's like, how did they get him the thing? I can't speak for everyone else. Like, that stuff still should not be allowed.
Yeah.
Like, that is recruiting violations at the highest level. That can make a kid ineligible. We're still saying, if an athlete falls ineligible because he or she does not keep up with the grades, Ben Simmons, don't let them play. If you let them play through, obviously those are violations, doing steroids, Bosworth, stuff like that. That's still not allowed. But, once you're in college, if you can make money from a YouTube channel, posting a tweet that literally says #ad, or, any of this other stuff, that's all fine and games, but none of this other stuff, before you get to school. I mean, I don't know where everyone else stands on that.
No, I agree, Nick. There's a big controversy on, and not just to pick him out, but I will say the Zion Williamson story. Like, did he, with the shoe or the house or whatever, was there wrongdoing there? There was a lot of stuff coming out. I know it was about 2 years ago. I think it was. Nothing really came to the total forefront, but it was really being It sounded sketchy. It didn't. And even being a Duke fan, I was kind of embarrassed by the whole thing. Yeah, no, they can't bribe players. You can't promise players. You can't do that kind of stuff because it's Derek and I, we talked about this in another show, and I'm not going to reference the show. I'm just going to say there's got to be an integrity, Derek, you know where I was going. There's an integrity to this type of thing. There's a moral code to it. Phil smiling. I know you know what I'm talking about. That's the bottom line. Like this is supposed to be not just money, but it's supposed to be these coaches coming in and courting these kids. But we did see it in the movie The Blind Side. Like that was the biggest thing in that movie was, were they just doing that because they want him to go to Mississippi State, Michael, or the true story? And no, it's got to stay on the up and up. But I do believe these athletes deserve to get paid. And I think the licensing and the rights are getting to be in a good step. And I wrote that down yesterday when I was writing my stuff. And I'll stay with that. I'll stick with that until I have to go to my resting place, as they say.
Yeah. That brings me up a question I wanted to ask of you guys, as we're saying too, I saw something too that a little bit with this NIL, some of the schools, like as far as we said, recruiting and how this can obviously affect it. And that's how you get players, the talent pool, how you get them to come to your school. But do you think that that this is going to drastically change the way that some, let's just, if you want to look at college football or college basketball, that some schools are able to recruit differently now that these rules are in place? Is it going to fundamentally change? Are we going to see programs in 5 years from now that are a lot different than they were 3 years ago? That kind of thing.
I almost worry that we're already seeing the Alabamas and the Clemsons of the world in football head and shoulders above. I almost wonder, is this going to put them out of reach? Because if they're obviously if this gets put in play where you can actually pay the players, not the NIL stuff, it's probably only going to be, what is there, 120 maybe a D1 programs? 25
FBS D1 schools.
What would you say, Nick? Maybe half would legitimately be able to give a decent wage to some of these players. You think? Go ahead. Go ahead, Nick.
I'm going back to the notepad here in my Anthony Kornheiser moment here. Named her off this week with all this stuff going on. He'd be having a field. So, 120 or 125 FCS schools. Okay, so Division I FCS schools. 125 have football. Okay, how many of them do you think made a profit? Now, I'm going to preface this by saying, okay, this school year is not technically over yet. Okay, it actually is, but they don't have that on yet.
Summer classes. That's
pandemic inflicted. Yeah. 2019-2020 was a pandemic inflicted year also. So a lot of spring sports got canceled. You didn't have the championships. There was no NCAA basketball tournament. So the numbers and data that I'm about to give you is from 2018 to 2019. Okay, so it's technically 2 years ago data, but it's the last school year that did not involve a pandemic. Okay.
Fair.
So, profit in their athletic
40.
Athletic department as a whole, or
as an athletic department as a whole.
Okay. Whew. Yeah,
I was gonna say about 25.
Yeah,
25 from Derek. Phil,
I'm gonna say 50.
0.
Not a single FCS school.
Wow.
Football made a profit. The median loss of all those schools was $14.3 million in their athletic department. Some of it is more because they had to get allocated money just so they could avoid losing more.
Oh, my.
Now, non-Power 5 schools. Okay? So these are schools that have football in Division I that are not in the SEC, the ACC, the Pac-12, the Big Ten, or the Big 12, right? Pac-12, Big Ten, Big 12, ACC, SEC. Okay? There's 64 of those, okay, non-power fives. How many of them? So that means, for reference, the Temples,
Cincinnati.
There's others. I'm drawing a
Yeah.
blank. Boise State,
Marshall.
Hawaii. Okay, I'm drawing some blanks.
Idaho State.
Yeah.
Wyoming.
Coastal Carolina.
Coastal Carolina. Okay, there's 64 of those non-power fives. How many of them do you think made money as a whole athletic department? Everyone think you guess again.
0.
Probably none.
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 No.
Correct. 0. All of them lost money. The
Yeah.
median loss for all 64 of those schools, $23 million.
Oh my
In the
gosh.
athletic department. That's the median, which means some lost a lot more. Okay. Division I schools with no football.
Oh boy.
Okay. Division I schools with no football. There's 97 of them. Okay. Now I could be wrong in saying a few of these, but I believe Wichita State does not have football. St. John's does not have football. Most of the Big East schools don't have football, other than Villanova.
Providence.
Well, that's Big East, yeah.
Gonzaga.
Wichita State does not have it, I believe. I'm trying to think of some others, but I'm drawing-
Gonzaga.
Gonzaga, yeah,
Yeah.
Gonzaga, however you say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's 97 of those schools. Okay.
This can't be 0 again.
How many of them? 97 Division I schools with no football, and there's about 361 Division I schools. 97 of them don't have football. How many of them do you think made money as an athletic department? Keep in mind, football is the most expensive sport to run.
Probably still 0.
Derek says 0. Phil?
3.
3. Joe?
I'm gonna say 5. 0.
0 again. Average loss or median
My God.
loss, 14.4 million.
Wow.
Yeah. Now to give you some schools, some Power 5 schools that lost money. Georgia Tech, 11 million in the hole. UNC, 3 million in the hole. My boys, Louisville, 11 million down the drain. Ohio, 10 million down the drain. And that's because they had to do all these buyouts and everything with Urban Meyer at the time. And
Stupid Urban Meyer.
I think they just got done paying Jim Tressel's buyout.
There-
Why they had a loss of the year. Alabama, rolling Tide were rolling down in the dirt, 19 million in the hole, and I think that's because they built this state-of-the-art facility and
They
whatnot.
gave Saban a lot.
Okay, they lost money. Now,
The facilities.
okay,
Holy
how
monkeys.
many Division I schools? How many Division I? Or let me preface this by saying, the median profit of schools that made money is 7.9 million. Median, so in the middle. So you're making 7.9 million on your 100, maybe 200 million expenses. Okay, across all athletic departments.
Holy crap.
If I did the research on this right, okay, of the entire Division I schools that have some type of sports, okay, it's approximately 1,100. How many of them do you think made money as a whole as an athletic department? Now it's more than 0, so I'll tell you that.
Okay. Every sport.
Every sport. So
Oh
of
my.
1,100 schools that have some type of sport, okay, because obviously not every school has basketball, I imagine, because you have some technical schools that are considered Division
Yeah.
I.
Yeah.
Or, maybe some other schools that are of a religious school.
Guys, you have a guess, Derek?
It's a number bigger than 0, and it's bigger than
Right.
1. I'll tell you
Under
that.
a dozen? Over under? Yeah, we said over under
All right,
here.
all right, you're right. I'll go over under 13 and a half.
Ooh,
Oh,
that's
Wow.
tough.
I go
yeah.
under.
Joseph's
Under.
going under. Derek,
Yeah, let's go over that.
over. Phil,
That was originally what was
That's a
in
good
my head.
line. That's a good line. It's tough.
you're going over.
So,
Okay. Joseph, I hope you're not a gambling man because you would have just lost money on this. Okay. 25.
Wow.
25 of 1,100. 2.27% of United States of America colleges made money as an athletic department. I'll give you a few. Florida State, Seminoles, haven't been good since Jimbo Crab Legs
Fisher.
Winston left school, okay? They made $2 million in 2018, 2019. Michigan,
Michigan. Chris Fowler.
To the good. Texas. Texas probably made money because Matthew McConaughey gave his money.
Vince Young. The Vince Young day.
19 million. Okay.
Wow.
Georgia, 28 million to the good. Okay. Now, the school that had the largest profit in 2018, 2019. Okay. I'm going to tell you who it is, and then we're going to do over under again. Texas A&M.
Wow.
They had the largest. Okay. They had the largest profit. Over under 34.5 million.
No, that's
Under again, Derek.
Yeah, we'll go under.
Bill.
I'll take the over then, just to go against the public.
Well, it's a good thing you did. And Joseph, do not gamble, my guy. $42 million they made. That's the athletic department.
Wow. That's crazy.
So Nick. Yeah.
Let's get back into the. Now, listen, we got a little off topic, having a little fun, doing some notes and everything. But back to the subject and the explanation of people saying, well, not every school can do it. Yeah, only 25 schools made money in the last full non-pandemic school year. But how are you going to tell me that Texas A&M or Georgia, which are making excess of $25 million in profit as a university athletic department, and TV deals are only going one way? We mentioned some of the deals earlier and how some of them are rising. And even in streaming, you could get some people that are going to get larger deals. TV deals are still going up despite cable numbers, people owning cable going down. Ratings are still through the roof because people still watch, and TV deals are still up. So you're going to tell us that a school like Texas or Texas A&M, Baylor was another one that made money. I think USC was one that made money. Excuse me. You're telling me that for the 500 student athletes you have there, you can't afford to give them $10,000 while they're competing in season? And then again, we mentioned schools like Alabama, Ohio State, Louisville that lost 10 plus million. But a lot of that's from upgrading facilities, I'm sure, because that costs millions of dollars. Turf is not expensive or not cheap, people. Trust me. I learned that in stadium and arena management. It ain't cheap. You offset those one-time costs. You start charging a little bit more money for some of these sports to make them revenue, like the lacrosse, baseball, like we mentioned, potentially. Wrestling, maybe you charge a little bit more to get in initially because there's not as many wrestling programs. So if you get an Oklahoma State that comes to town, or you get Rutgers, or you get Penn State, you shouldn't charge 10, 15 bucks for nosebleeds. You should be charging 30, 35 for nosebleeds. Then you start to get revenue flowing again. And again, $35 for 6 wrestling home matches. You ain't going to generate $1 million off of it, besides your arena and whatnot. But you start to make up some more of it, and you get people that donate. Like one of St. John's biggest donors, who's on the board of trustees, I forget the guy's name to this day, but I remember he's the CEO of Vitamin Water.
Wow.
That guy has money. He brings it to the university. He led the coaching search when Chris Mullen stepped down. So, like,
power broker.
I'm interested to hear how some of you answer to some of those numbers that I threw at you as I put my notepad back down here. But and that stuff. But again, people, there's money. Great Don Ohlmeyer always said, the answer to all your problems is money.
Well, I think we're running a little low on time, so we probably should wrap it up a little bit. Phil, did you want to say something quick?
There was one thing I saw going around that I just wanted to bring up. Let's say in a hypothetical too, we're all agents here, right?
Oh boy.
You can pick 3 athletes from the past that you want to represent, that they're going to be now are allowed to make marketing deals, NIL.
How many sports? What sports though?
Well, whatever. You know, we can put constraints on it however you want. I just like the discussion.
Let's keep it to football and basketball because that's probably where we can think of the most athletes.
Tiger Woods?
The most.
So
you're saying we have to pick 3 athletes who past and present make money. I'll give you one right away. Reggie Bush. I mean, that's a gimme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go Vince Carter.
Ooh.
Didn't like him in college, but I loved him in the NBA, and he was a heck of an athlete. And then a guy that you could
What he
market.
made more than Antoine Jameson.
Well, I like Vince Carter though. I like Vince Carter more.
Bo Jackson could be one.
Oh,
I was gonna say, give me the multi-sport athletes.
Yeah.
Bo
Ooh.
Jackson. Oh my
Dion.
God, did Jim Thorpe go to college?
Jim
He went
Thorpe.
to college.
That's a good.
Oh,
In all those sports.
I'm gonna
Dave
go.
Winfield.
I'm gonna go way
Dave
back to
Winfield.
the third one.
Dave Winfield's a good one, Phil.
Cut you off.
What about all right, I'll do one that's a multi-sport athlete, but a guy that nobody's gonna think of because he's an average player, but Greg Paulus, quarterback in basketball.
My guy. Yeah.
All time.
I beat
There you
him
go,
in,
Greg
Third
Paulus.
guy.
I beat him in horseshoes on a beach one time. No big deal.
My third guy I would do to answer Phil's question, and I'm going way back here, and it's a big name, but you know what? The way he was playing and the way everything was going, I mean, I don't know how you would be able to argue it. Actually, it's going to be one of two people. It'll be one of two people. It'd either be one, Patrick Ewing,
Mhm.
or two, I would probably go with Bill Walton or Lou Alcindor from John Wooden's UCLA teams.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, that's a great
Good
one.
calls.
Derek, you got
Let
another
me
good one,
stretch.
Derek?
Who was better?
Well, that's
I would probably also maybe a generational talent, someone like a Wilt Chamberlain at Kansas, maybe.
yeah, that's a good one. I like that.
I mean, either the generational talents or the multi-sports guys is where
I'll
I
go
would probably
MJ.
put
I'll go
that.
MJ for my brother because he was always an MJ guy. I go Michael Jordan.
Really? In
Gotta-
college?
Well, he started to become a star though. I'm not saying he was
He
like
did.
He
I
got
mean,
all the
listen,
shooting
I
years.
love Michael Jordan because he won us a national championship.
Yeah, I knew you were
and
gonna say that.
everything. And I know he was like he was what? I think the third pick in the draft in 82, 83.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I
was
know it
around
was the
there.
third pick, but let me tell you something. There were some darn good college basketball. He wasn't the best college basketball player in his time.
no, not in this. No, that's true. Not in this time. All right, I'll give you one more. Then I'll give you another one. I'll go with
Don't say Christian Leitner.
No,
You say a
I'm not-
Duke
I'm
guy, I
not-
swear to God.
That was gonna be mine. He was on the dream team.
Derek, I'm going Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson from
Okay,
Georgetown.
that's interesting because he had a little he had issues there when he first
Yeah.
got to Georgetown. Then and
High
Yeah.
school.
He grew up in Philly, I think, though. I'd always
Yeah.
thought that.
well,
he's
remember his
from,
Hall of Fame
Vir-
speech,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know what he was saying. I'm going to close
Well-
out. I'm going to make it quick here. I want to do one more thing that I wrote down.
Oh boy.
So this is my proposal of about 10 years from now, what's going to happen with college football. And it only can happen with football because football is the big money maker, revenue sport, okay? And this way with football would probably generate the money to pay athletes. And I say 10 years from now because a lot of TV deals expire in the early 2030s.
Yeah.
So about 8 years from now, 9 years from now, at the turn of the decade again, assuming we'll be seeing TV deals renegotiated, and you might see teams try to get out of their current conferences. Okay, here's my proposal: you're going to have D2 and D3 will stay the same, but you're going to have 3 levels of college football, Division I, whereas right now you have 2. So the lowest level is going to be FCS. That's going to stay as it is. Everything will stay as it is because they can't afford to play the big boys. You're going to have low-level D1, okay? So we're talking about all the schools that probably break even, maybe have a marginal profit, but probably run a loss, okay? And they're still big-time schools, okay? These are Washington State. This is Rutgers. This is Maryland. Actually, Boston College would be big time. But this is Missouri. Maybe we're talking Kentucky for football purposes. Maybe South Carolina, like the teams that don't really do well in their
So you don't necessarily think it's like the MAC conference or the WAC conference in general. It's just
It's
the
not, but
smaller
they're gonna-
schools in
they're gonna
general.
they're smaller schools of the football
For
FBS.
football. Yeah.
They're going to create their own divisions and whatnot. So you can see like a Rutgers and Ohio in the same conference. And the reason being is because like the top 40, top 50 football FBS schools, they're going to go and create their own conference with, 6 divisions. You have 8 or 9 teams in each of them. They might retain, SEC, ACC, etc., or they might say, Big Time 1 or Big Conference 1, Big Conference 2, something like that, or Division 1, 6 divisions. And that's where you'll see Alabama, LSU, Boston College because you need a northern team, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, UCLA, USC, Oregon, Washington. You'll see the big schools. They're going to go and create their own thing. And that's where you're going to get the playoff from then. Maybe it's 8 teams. Again, you have like 5 or 6 divisions. Playoff teams, you can have the New York, and that's where you get the New Year's 6 from them. And the New Year's 6 come from those teams. You take one team from the low levels. Say Rutgers, hypothetically speaking, is the best of all the FBS 1A teams. Okay, they get to go play in the New Year's 6 Bowl against one of the FBS 1 teams. And then you still have all the other ancillary bowls because it's easy TV revenue and ticket sales. And that's, again, how you pay for athletes and whatnot. But then I'm going to steal a little thing from European soccer where the bottom 2 in each division from Big Time. So just say hypothetically, say LSU goes 2-8 one year and they finish last in the Southeastern Big Time 1 Conf division. And say Arkansas went 7-4 and finished first in their geographical low time SEC conference, whatever it's called, whatever you call it. Now Arkansas gets to go play big time and LSU has to play small time for the next season. And then LSU can work their way back up again. They play, maybe they destroy the competition. But I mean, that's something you could see for like the big time schools just going out on their own and getting these TV deals. And those TV deals are how you pay for, maybe you give the athletes $10,000 in every sport, and that's how you generate money as a profit. Maybe ticket numbers go up a little bit. So instead of getting, a $60 nosebleed seat for Alabama LSU, maybe it's now $80. I don't know about anyone else. I'd pay
a little more expensive than that now.
Maybe, yeah, but maybe it's $110.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd go see that, and maybe they just started selling beer. I think 2 seasons ago in the SEC. But maybe now no one would be happy about this because you're paying more for freaking beer. But maybe instead of paying $5-6 for it, now you got to pay $7 for it, but you get a little bit more. I don't know. At St. John's, I had to pay $13 to get a Heineken.
Yeah,
it's like
those prices
I also want to buy a Heineken, so my choice.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's just a proposal I had. I don't know if it will actually happen, but it's an interesting thing to think about with rising TV deals and contracts and everything.
No, that was a very interesting point, Nick. Honestly, as we were talking, it was kind of in my head, but I wasn't sure how crazy it was that I think they may actually create a new division in some way. Yeah, I guess so, because the top teams are probably, if we do institute this paying players, the top teams are probably going to move up even further. And some of the teams are just not going to be able to compete. You're not going to see the Ohio's. Once in a blue moon, you'll see an upset. Yeah, you might see an upset of an Ohio over an Ohio State, but not once that comes into play.
But that's maybe something you can still schedule. So maybe in the big time, like the FBS 1A, and then you have regular FBS. You could say, okay, hey guys, it's a 12-game season. You get 1 bye week, and you get to schedule 2 games against teams from the regular FBS. So you can still see that stuff. And you know what? It would actually might be better competition because you avoid seeing Alabama have to play the Citadel every year and seeing it 59-0 at halftime. Yeah. Or, the LSUs or the Baylors the week before Thanksgiving playing southeastern Missouri or something, which you didn't even know was a school probably. So it creates a
Yeah.
competition.
That made me think of the Appalachian State that upset when they beat Michigan that year. You know, and there, and then I remember Penn State played them like last year or 2 years ago. Like that program has dudes. They're good.
Yeah.
You know, like they
Good
like
school.
that's what I was thinking too. This kind of comes up. I think the you know, the schools, the haves and have nots, there's gonna be your, you know, Ohio State, USC, Texas, like those traditional blue bloods through there. But I mean, like if you look at it, remember like 15 years ago, 10 years ago, Clemson wasn't what Clemson is now. You know, like if you're say, oh, you're a top running back recruit, like do you go and sit for a year or two behind the guy at Alabama and wait for your time to play? Or, you know, do you go to I don't know, North Carolina and, you know, become the star running back as a freshman because more people are gonna, you know, that's a way to increase your followers on Instagram and Twitter that can lead you to more money. You know what I mean? I think this stuff, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And I think the schools that kind of facilitate this or look at it and say, like, I know already Penn State has announced that they've have like a roadmap or a program that they've developed to assist the players through this process. And I think the schools that kind of help facilitate this in a way without, you know, keeping things in, but also, I mean, you got to protect players too, because you can make bad business deals. You know, you could sign a deal with the wrong company who says, oh, we're going to pay you this much and this is the deal. And then, you know, 6 months later or something that the check bounces or that kind of stuff. Like that stuff can happen. So it'll be interesting.
Well, it's a very interesting topic, guys, and it could very well change before this video even gets out. Who knows? But it's safe to say, I just want to leave us with a stat here that in 2017 there was a Seton Hall sports poll that came out, and 60% of people believed that college scholarships were enough compensation for college athletes, whereas the same poll in 2019, 60% agreed they need more than just the scholarships as compensation. 32 disagreed. So times are changing, as Phil has said multiple times already. So Phil and Nick, we very much appreciate you coming on. This is a very good talk, and we hope to have you on again sometime soon.
Was a lot of fun.
Enjoyed it. By the way, Joe, Tatis just hit a homer.
There it is.
I'm kidding. I just felt like teasing you. We had to get a little baseball in on this podcast, I know. Or show.
Yes, I did say that. I did say that in my final thoughts that I was going to try to stick to basketball and football, but when I realized about remembering Phil played at Lehigh, I wanted to throw that in, and that was only baseball I wanted to talk about. So other than that, I think the people I want to see what people think, because we might get some good feedback if you guys don't mind sharing. We always ask to please share on Facebook. I know, Phil, you're not a big Facebook guy, and Nick, you're bigger on Twitter, but just to help us, because it always gets us to. And people out there can also realize that we don't care if you hear us say it. We need it. We need to have subscribers on YouTube just as much as we need to have the follows and the shares. So, but no, it was a really fun show. It was something that I was actually a little nervous about going into it, I think, because when we do these shows, I always worry about if I know enough. And I think with Phil and Nick and you, Derek, of course, everybody brought a good amount of information. And I thought that it went really well. And, you know, maybe down the road we can do another one in college football season. But it was fun. It was good. It was definitely a good show, though. Thanks guys for coming on again.
Well, for those that stuck around, we appreciate you being here. Joe said it. Jump down to the comments. Let us know your thoughts. Your thoughts are just as important as all of ours. We want to know what you have to say. Should college athletes be paid? Yay, nay? Let us know your thoughts. Let us know some examples of why you say so, and maybe you'll see Phil or Nick or Joe or I comment and let you know our thoughts as well. But we appreciate everyone watching. Don't forget click that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. It very much helps Joe and I build our channel. And don't forget to like while you're there as well. Follow us on Twitter, all podcast platforms, Facebook group, and you can email us. Any topics you want us to cover, these were ones that we came up with. But if there's a specific topic you think you want us to cover, send us an email, timeoutderekandjoe@gmail.com. Maybe you'll see it in a future episode. As always, everyone, thank you for taking time out of your day to spend some time with us. Stay safe and take care.